Hi guys, so this week we're going to be writing our second essay, and this one is going to focus on poetry. So this week is going to be a little bit different in that you have the option of using outside research, but it is not required. I'll get into that in a minute, but I highly suggest using research. But first, when it comes time to decide which poem or poems you want to write about, I'm not forcing you to choose one of the poems that we've read already. I'm allowing you to choose anything that we've read or is in the textbook itself. So if you weren't drawn to anything that we've read so far and you want to take a look at our textbook, right in the beginning, when you're looking at the preface material, Roman numerals 13, part 2, poetry, starts on chapter 11 on page 730, and it lists all sorts of different poetry. So if you know any poets that you like, something that you've read in high school or something that you've read in your free time, if you like Robert Frost or Langston Hughes or anything you have some experience with and that you'd be more comfortable delving into on your own, feel free to look through there. But look in that content section because that can kind of help you just get an overview of what's in there. So as far as the assignment itself, I have all the instructions uploaded here for you. It's 3 to 4 pages. Just be careful. A couple people last essay ended up with 2 plus a little bit pages. So just because it hits that 3rd page doesn't mean it's 3 pages. It has to be 3 full pages of text at least. And that does not include the works cited page. So I gave you some details here that you're going to want to make sure you read through, making sure you have a thesis statement, making sure that it is well organized, that you're using the poetic devices that we've learned this unit, including meter and rhythm and rhyme scheme, things like that that are new to this unit, but we're also using some of the elements that we have learned previous. So we're still using things like anaphora and alliteration, personification, things like that. So all those elements now, you just have extra ones at your disposal when it comes to offering your own interpretation of this poem. So again, looking at the details here, make sure you're using the proper vernacular for poetry. You're not using the word narrator, you're using the word speaker, you're not using paragraph, you're using the word stanza, that sort of thing. So if you need to kind of refresh your memory on those terms, go back to the reading in the book, go back to the PowerPoints that we've done, the previous lectures that we've gone through to make sure that you're up on all those things, because that's really how I'm testing your comprehension of everything that we've learned so far, is not just your knowledge of the terms, but your ability to apply them. So now obviously knowing them is first. So again, I said that you have the option of using outside research, but I'm not requiring it. I really recommend it. I think people struggle sometimes coming up with something to say when you're analyzing, and I think oftentimes a nice jump off is to find something that you disagree with. That's one of the most popular reasons you even know you have an argument. You hear what someone else has to say about something and you're like, no, I don't think that's true. Or I never looked at it that way and I kind of agree with it, but I saw it go in a slightly different direction. Here's how my argument fits with yours. It's a really popular way to argue. So I encourage you to branch out, go back through that video where I introduce you how to use our databases, and specifically the Literature Resource Center, that database that has all sorts of just great information for you to pick through in terms of finding new information about the poem. So it could be something that someone else has argued about this poem in terms of their analysis. It could be historical context. It could be biographical information about the poet. It could be information about a situation that the poem is talking about. If it's talking about a specific war and you want to learn more about that war and how details from the poem kind of enlighten that period in a different way, or that war. There's just lots of information that can help you. And it can also help you reach that 3rd page. So if you were someone who struggled getting 3 full pages, building off of someone else gives you a lot of meat there to work off of. So I'm not requiring it because I haven't in the past, but in general, they make for stronger essays. So I gave you some other just recommendations for how to be successful in the essay. And then I wanted to make sure that you understood how to incorporate lines of poetry, because it looks slightly different than it does in regular fiction, in prose, which is sentences. You're going to use a slash right here to mark an individual line. So if you look at an example like this is from Emily Dickinson, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. It's actually a poem that I normally require, but we just kind of ran out of time this semester because everything's moving so quickly. I'm actually not sure it's in the textbook. It wasn't in the previous edition, so it's probably not, but if it's one that you're interested in, because I think there's a lot you can get out of it, just if you went online, I'm sure you can find a copy of it, or ask me for it, I can give it to you. But what I really want you to look at here is the way that this direct quote from the poem is used in a sentence. So you're still using quotation marks, you still have an in-text citation with author's last name. These numbers right here, however, are line numbers. They're not page numbers. So that's an important difference. And again, this slash here shows the reader that is where the end of the line was, because as you know with poetry, the lines don't always end at a sentence, and most frequently they don't. So in this case, Because I Could Not Stop for Death slash He Kindly Stopped for Me, this is telling your reader that these are formed on two different lines. And in fact, it looks like this. This is the first stanza of that poem. So I'm showing you how to use a block quote, which means that you have used 4 or more lines of a poem at once. In general, I don't recommend that. Usually that's too much information without enough analysis. It's kind of difficult to make that work well. So I strongly recommend using a line, even a couple of words, maybe 2 lines. When you hit 4, you want to make sure that your analysis is substantial. It wants to be just as long as that stanza itself. So if you find that might be difficult, it's easier, in my opinion, to break it down in like 2 sentences. Let me analyze. Here's 2 more sentences. Let me analyze more. But just in case you do feel confident that you could use a block quote and do it well, you would not use the format that I just showed you, keeping it all in one line with a slash marking the end of a line. Instead, you'd format it like so. So there is a 1-inch margin on the left of your essay. You maintain double spacing, and then after the section that you're using, whether it's a stanza or a stanza and a half or whatever it is, you still have the line numbers here. Oddly enough, the period goes before the in-text citation, unlike with a short quote where it goes after, and then you go right back left aligned. So this is the chunk that would be the essay. So to introduce a block quote like this, you want to make sure it's a complete sentence that's setting up this kind of huge break from your own words to hear from the poem. So you're kind of telling your reader, this is why I'm showing this to you. This is why it was important enough for me to kind of stop speaking and let you read the poem for a little bit by yourself. So an analytic essay, you would start with a sentence like this. Dickinson begins her poem with a description of death personified as a gentleman suitor transporting her on a date. You'll notice there's a colon here. That's very important. So you're not just going to say in the poem and then continue with your stanza, or Dickinson says. That's not enough. You need that full analytical sentence. And here's the stanza itself. And then you want to go back and kind of discuss what the reader was supposed to get out of that. So in this case, there's kind of a reflection back. Here's a nice transition. This first stanza, so you're reflecting back that stanza I just showed you, and then you're going to analyze it for the reader. So there's the details that are required. I'm going to have you guys do a check-in midway through the week, just like we did with the fiction analysis. Answer these 4 questions. Just post your working thesis. Just kind of give your best idea of what you think that analytical sentence is going to look like, the poetic devices you plan to use, a direct quote from the poem that you're going to use embedded in a sentence, and any outside research that you're planning to use, and then you're going to give and get some feedback on that. In the lecture folder this week, I included a lot of the information that we've already had. So another kind of copy of our assignment details in case you want it again. Templates for incorporating outside research. You already got that with the fiction analysis unit. but it's here again if you need it. MLA Works Cited rules, the format, how to write a thesis statement, integrating textual evidence, and there's also a video on using the Literature Resource Center database. So if you're looking for some really good outside research, find yourself in that database. It's going to be very helpful. And lastly, in this folder are student examples. So I have 3 examples here. One of them is combining a couple of different Shakespeare sonnets. It's taking a little bit to load. But what I included are also I might have to resubmit this. That will look better when you're actually looking at it. Let's try this one. This is Emily Dickinson again. Okay, so these 3 students got A's for the essay. They did not use outside research because I did not require it or recommend it for this class, but I regretted that. So that's why I'm encouraging you guys to do that as well. But this was their essay. It includes some of the comments that I had given in yellow. If you hover over them, it should kind of jump out any questions that I had or things that I suggested. Things that were good, things that I would have worked on. So one of them was, like I said, that Emily Dickinson poem. One of them is analyzing that Complainer poem by Rudy Francisco that we read last week. It was a contemporary poem. Also received an A. And this one, I guess I just need, there it is. Okay. This one compares a couple of different poems. So I wanted to show you guys this one, because you'll notice that he does use entire stanzas, which wasn't the strongest way to do it, but he did it well, because if you read through, you'll see the way that he really closely analyzes it, both before and after the stanza. So that's really the way to do that well. The other reason I chose this one is because he is comparing 2 poems. So one strategy would be to, instead of analyzing one poem, is to say, I want to pick 2 Robert Frost poems, or 2 Shakespeare sonnets, or 2 poems by Emily Dickinson, or 2 poems, maybe not by the same poet, but about the same thing. I want to pick 2 poems that are both about death, or 2 that are about love, or about age, or time, or a war, and compare them to each other. How do they do things similar? What's different? Why is that important? How do these 2 poems, maybe just how are they emblematic of the times? So there's a lot of different kind of angles you can take there. But that also may be helpful if, say, a poem that you really want to talk about just is really short and you don't think that there's enough there for you to really get enough meat to meet that 3 to 4 page analysis. But look through there. There's a lot of good stuff. Obviously, they're very different poems. Shakespeare, early American lit, and then contemporary lit. So find something that you like, find something that you can say about it. Don't worry too much about being wrong, as long as, again, you're touching back on details from the text as proof, then your analysis is not inherently wrong, even if obviously we don't know exactly what the poem is saying. You're arguing it as if you do. So let me know if you have any questions. The essay will be due on Sunday. So if there's anything that I can help you with, please feel free to just check in. Even if you're just struggling personally, I know we're all dealing with just crazy circumstances that we were not signed up for. So I'm very patient, and if you just need some help or someone to kind of bounce ideas off of, just let me know. I'm doing my best to keep in touch with you guys and make sure that we're getting there. We're almost there. We have 1 month left. So find your own poem and let me know what you think about it. Thanks, guys.